Exactly.
So I
Welcome.
see. Oh, go ahead. You welcome people. Go ahead.
Welcome everybody to Honey on the Slate. It is July 5th and we just celebrated a beautiful Independence Day. I hope you guys had a safe and fun one. We're so grateful and thankful to be in this country.
Yes,
And
I am.
it is 7 p.m. Excited about this study. So do you want to start, Pastor John?
Yes, I do. I remind me. I want to address last week's video, if it's going to be or not going to be, or if it's just going to be audio, and I want to address some of the rest of the days off this month and next month. Just if you can remind me to review that at the end. But I'm very excited about getting things started. I hope we have a wonderful time in fellowshipping in the Word, fellowshipping with the Lord, with the Holy Spirit, as He reveals deeper things than we've seen before, possibly in this wonderful book of Ephesians. And I want to back up a little bit. I hope you don't mind a little review. This is chapter 5, verse 21, where Paul says, submitting yourselves one to another in the fear of God. That's all of us in the body of Christ, all of us in the church. We are to be submitted one to another. We're not to esteem the other higher than ourselves, and we're to consider Christ is the head. The head is the most important thing. Any other part is just a part of the body. The head is where the whole thing works. Without the head, there's no nerve system, there's no life. So we submit one to another. And then he goes into specific submission, where he says in verse 22, wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands. But he says, submit as unto the Lord. Well, what does that mean? We're going to learn more about that as this goes on, but consider something that you're principally doing before the Lord. You're submitting your heart to the Lord, and thus you submit to others in the same way. So we are submitted to the Lord. Therefore, we should love like the Lord, and we should serve like the Lord. Okay. And then the husband is the head of the wife, like Christ is the head of the body. And therefore, as the church is subject under Christ, in that picture of the church being subject to the head, to Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands. So in the relationship, they are subject to the husband as the head of the household, but lateral in Christ. Husbands, love your wife. Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it, which is a very tall order. Some people have trouble with the language of wives, submit yourselves unto your husbands. The women's movement doesn't like the idea of being submitted to men, for example. I understand that. But they don't understand being submitted to the Lord. So we're talking two different languages here. Also, when it says, husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church. Well, what woman is not going to revere her husband if she is being loved the way, with a perfect love, the way Christ, loves and gives, so that he might sanctify and cleanse it, referring to the church, that Christ may sanctify and cleanse the body, the church, or the bride, with the washing of the water of the word. Water is cleansing. The word is living water. By proclaiming the word, praying the word, speaking the word, living the word, fellowshipping with the living word, that the husband is presenting his wife a glorious church without spot or wrinkle. A glorious bride without spot or wrinkle, by the washing of the water of the word. So that she should be holy and without blemish, the church, as well as the bride would be if the husband's doing his job right and loving her properly. It's verse 28, so ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loves his wife loves himself. Well, remember, the two shall become one flesh, the same body. So if we're doing it right, folks, the husband loves his wife as his own body. He takes care. Nobody has yet hated his own body, but nourishes it and cares for it. The same thing with the wife. If it's done right, it's mutually edifying, mutually building up. Now, but get the language of that he might present it to himself, a glorious church. There's a simile with the marriage in here, because he's talking about husbands and wives, and he's comparing it to the church, and he's talking about it being presented to himself, presenting it to himself. Well, there's a lot that's going on here that relates to Genesis. If we look at Genesis 2, let's see, 222. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man made he a woman, and he brought her unto the man. God presented Eve to Adam. So here we have the Lord presenting the church to himself, a glorious church, in the context or the picture of a marriage where the husband loves his wife, and so that she is beautiful to him and in concert with him in their spiritual relationship together. That's a very beautiful picture there. So then he goes on, verse 30, we're all members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. Well, that goes back to Genesis again, where Genesis 2:23, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She'll be called woman because she was taken from man. So we're getting imagery from the very beginning, from Genesis, about why God made man, why he made man and woman, and what that's a picture of, with the family love that the Father and the Son have, and the creative action that produces. So we have, for we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones, just as Eve was members of Adam's body by his flesh and his bones. Eve, the church, let's get it here. And then he says, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. So from Genesis, that is Genesis 2:24, therefore, which we saw for this cause wait a minute. The therefore is where are we? Therefore, for this cause is the like Paul says it in Moses is saying, therefore shall a man leave his father and mother and shall cleave unto his wife. Now, when God presented Eve to Adam, he had not left his father. Think about that. Subsequently, as this was the first, but subsequently, for a man to be betrothed, to marry a woman, he needs to leave his father and his mother. And then there's something that fills that absence, which is a new life, new creation. Are you with me? So, at the beginning, Adam had not left his father. So there was a perfect picture in that. Nevertheless, verse 32. Well, back to 31 again. They shall be joined, the two shall be joined together, the husband and the wife shall be joined together, and they two shall be one flesh. Again, no man yet hated his own body. Your husband and the wife are considered one flesh. Okay, so 32. This is a great mystery. What is a great mystery? Well, if you look at the Genesis references about this union of, first of all, it's a mystery of pulling Eve out of man and then presenting her back to him, and the first human couple. But there's still something mysterious about men and women, the magnetic attraction. There's first there's the visual attraction, then there's the the romantic attraction. And you know, you think about in the cartoons where so-and-so would see just stars in their eyes and then get all dizzy when they, you know, would look at a female, you know, animal or whatever in the cartoons, you know, talking about the Disney kind of thing. There is a dizziness that you get when you fall in love. There's nothing else like it, and you don't have to explain it. When you experience it, you know what it is. But it's still a mystery. And so I'm going to take us to Proverbs 30. So Proverbs 30, let's see, if we start at, let's see. If you look at verse 15, the horse leech has two daughters crying, give, give. There are three things that are never satisfied, yea, four things say not, it is enough. And I don't know if you're fans of the book of Proverbs, but I read it a lot, and I get a kick out of it all every time I read it. I find more gold in it. Now, the horse leech is a word that we don't use anymore, but just think of a leech. Have you ever been swimming and you had a leech on you? First time I was at Boy Scout camp in 6th grade at Camp Moshkanoshu in Wisconsin, there was a freshwater lake there. It was way up north in Wisconsin in the woods. And we had compulsory swimming in the cold lake. But the group or the troop before us was a bunch of Boy Scout troops who were up there. And when they came out of their swimming experience in the water, their legs had these big black blotches on them, about the size of a quarter, or sometimes they were a little longer. And they were leeches. The kids had come out of the water with like 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 leeches on them. And the scoutmasters had a big, you know, thing of Morton salt. They pour salt on them, and the leeches didn't like that, and they'd let them go. I wasn't going to go in the water. I didn't go in the water. That creeped the heck out of me. But a leech, it leaches onto your skin, it bites in, and it sucks your blood. And it's insatiable. The point is, there are things that are insatiable that can never be quenched. And he says that it has two daughters. And in other words, there's two branches on the fork of these things that are insatiable. And in my Bible, I have the one that I study most is Bullinger's Companion Bible, and horse leech is only used here, and he says that it's like the flesh in a man, like the carnal, fleshly human aspects of a man. He says in the natural and in the spiritual spheres, the dose has to be increased. The things that it lusts for have to continuously be increased. It's like when you know how the pusher man, you know, here's the first one's free, the drug dealer, because then you have an insatiable desire for more and more and more. With sin is like that. So when he says that there are three things that are never satisfied, yea, four, it's not enough. This is a figure of speech, because it's used elsewhere in the Proverbs, where the idea of three and four means that the writer is indicating, the writer is giving only 3 or 4 examples. The complete list would be much longer. So in other words, there's 4 things. There's a bunch, but he's going to give you the 4, right? But anyways, looking at the leech's example, it has a constant appetite for blood. Well, let me move on here. Trust me, I'll get back to Ephesians on this. Well, what are these multiple things that are never satisfied? Okay. The grave and the barren womb. Well, the grave, first of all, the earth, the Sheol takes the dead into it. It'll take it all day long. All day long, it'll suck in death. The grave is never satisfied. Now, the barren womb. Now, the way I read that is that the barren womb yearns to be fruitful. So the barren womb can't be satisfied because of that ongoing yearning. And then the fire. Oh wait, and after the barren womb, it's the earth that is not filled with water. Well, Ron was telling me today, my business partner, that it's been so dry where he is in Woodstock that the ground in his front yard is starting to show cracks in it. It looks like the Dust Bowl up there. All his grass is dead. It's so dry. Well, the earth that is not filled with water, that'll just soak it up all day long. It'll take as much water as it can get before it runs off. And then the fire that says not, it is enough. Those fires that are burning in Canada, I was talking about this earlier today. Those fires that are burning in Canada, are they ever going to say, I'm tired of this? You guys want to stop the burning? Let's take a break. We don't need to burn it anymore. We've had enough. No, it's going to keep, as long as there's fuel, it's going to keep on burning it. And then the eye that mocketh at his father and despises to obey his mother. Once that attitude flips in the parental-child relationship, and there is probably some things in translation and in the Hebraism or a phrase or a colloquial phrase about mocking the father and despising to obey his mother that we're not understanding out of this, but you can kind of guess. The whole point is that sin is insatiable. It's never going to stop as long as you're inclined in that direction. It's going to go on all day long. It's going to want everything. So then the point I wanted to get to is verse 18. There be three things which are too wonderful for me. In other words, wondering. I wonder about this. I can't even figure this out. It's too wonderful for me. Yea, four that I know not. In other words, the list can go on, but I'm going to give you four. The way of an eagle in the air. Birds fly. We don't fly. How do they do that? Right? I was driving through Lord's Park and in my car, and there was a duck who was standing in the middle of the road eating something. There was either some berries had fallen from the tree or there was some bugs in the road or whatever, but he's standing there eating it, and I'm sitting there waiting for him to cross the road, and he's just standing there and he's taking his own sweet time. And I wasn't going to honk or anything. I mean, it's common to see the wildlife in there, but I'm thinking to myself, he knows I'm here, and he's taking his time walking out of the window. You can fly. But anyways, there's four that I know not. The way of an eagle in the air. And the other one is the way of a serpent upon a rock. Like, you ever seen the chameleons on a flat rock? Those chameleons can just walk right up like they're defying gravity. And then the way of a ship in the midst of the sea. Well, those ships can weigh tons and they don't sink. Yeah, you throw a rock in the water that weighs a few ounces and it'll sink. How does that work? And here's the one I'm going for. And the way of a man with a maid. That's mysterious, folks. It's not bad, but it's a mystery because your buddy's all normal until he falls in love, and then he's all gaga about the girl or whatever. So my point about back to the Ephesians thing is this is a great mystery. And then he goes on and he explains this, but I'm speaking concerning Christ and the church. I'm using a simile here. I'm talking about Christ and the church. So all of these things in a human experiential way that we can understand, submitting ourselves one to another, husbands loving your wives, presenting the church to Christ, being one flesh. And then he goes on because he says, nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife, even as himself, and the wife see that she reverences her husband, or she holds him in awe. There's some other ways that can be read to be like fear, like really be afraid and tremble. But if you think about when God manifested himself to Moses on the mountain, that was scary. So there is, that's where we get the idea of the fear of God. But that's if you're under the law and you're not in the love side of him. So we're in the love side of him. But we're going to get an Old English and a legal echo in there whenever we talk about the fear of God, and that's part of that word reverence her husband. It can read it that way. And in the definition, you will also see it means to awe and respect highly. Okay, so then he goes into talking about the submitting yourselves. You have the husbands and wives submitting, and then children, obey your parents in the Lord, for that is right. So now he's saying to obey, submit to, right? To hold them in respect so that you're humble before them so that they have authority over you, right? That's the right way, the right attitude for kids to be with their mom and dad, to be raised properly. Okay, so to children, obey your parents in the Lord. So do it as unto the Lord. Do it in the Lord. You're obeying your parents. Why? Because he goes on to say, honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise. Well, why? Who do your parents represent? In a family unit, the parents are a picture of God. They're the authority. They're the provider. They're the protector. They're the healer. God is trying to tell us through pictures about what it's like to have a relationship with him. And it should start little with a married couple that are in love like crazy, and with the word being preeminent in the household, and the children taught respect of their parents, so that they can honor their father and mother. Then verse 3, if it's all done in the Lord, as you know, as God's prescription. Verse 3 is that it may be well with thee and thou mayest live long on the earth. In other words, that you may prosper even as your soul prospers, that you may have the grace and favor of God and live long. How about forever? That's the ultimate goal that this is pointing to. And then you fathers, provoke not your children to anger, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Well, that's the same thing that God does. He does not here to provoke us to anger. He's gentle and patient. Now, servants, be obedient to them that are your masters. Servants and masters is not a word that we use a lot anymore. We think of servants, we think of slaves, we think of masters, we think of the masters on the plantations and stuff like that, right? Well, the point is to be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh. In the world, in the natural sense, they are your masters in your circumstances, but with fear and trembling, in singleness of your heart, as unto Christ. So, because we don't relate to either being servants or masters necessarily, remember Bob Dylan's song, you got to serve somebody. You're either going to serve the devil or you're going to serve the Lord, but you're going to be serving somebody, because you boil it all down, and that's true. So the notion of, let's use a different word, and let's say, in my case, I'm an employer. So I have people that I am the master over, and they serve me. They get a paycheck, they serve me, right? Servants, be obedient unto your masters according to the flesh. Well, who is a servant? Another way of looking at a servant is none of us are entirely free of serving. Because, first of all, as believers, we're serving the Lord and we serve one another. We're submitting one to another. So we serve each other in the Lord. That's how the body is edified and fitly joined together, is our service to one another. Well, as servants, each of us in some point in our life is providing a service to somebody else, right? If you ever had a job, you were serving the employer. If you work for a corporation, you're not free to do whatever the heck you want. You do what they want. They give you a paycheck, but you do what they want. Well, if you do it as unto the Lord, it's almost like you do it without the paycheck because you're doing it as unto the Lord. We don't serve God because we get something from him. We serve him because he first gave to us. He loved us when we were unlovable, and he lifted us up and gave us new life. And we gladly, eagerly serve him because he's the source of our life. Well, whoever you work for, if you have that same attitude, that same humble heart to serve as unto the Lord, first of all, you'll be an exemplary employee. And you'll be blessed in that relationship. So none of us are entirely free. We all have obligations. There's people that we are obligated to. I'm obligated to my business partner, right? So I'm not entirely free to do whatever the heck I want. I don't show up for work for 2 weeks. Doesn't be a problem. But I don't begrudge him that, nor does he. I mean, we're equal partners. So, I work for him, he works for me. But it changed when I was reading that this week. It really changed my whole attitude about there's things, because I know I've been thinking about it's vacation time, it's summertime, and people get vacations. And I go, wow, I haven't had a vacation or a day off for that matter since the kids were little. And now they're grown and I got grandkids. And I thought, gee, it would be so nice to have a few days to just do whatever the heck I wanted. Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with that per se, but when I changed my whole attitude about the fact that every time the phone rings, I'm doing something for somebody else. Every time an email comes in, I got to respond, doing something for somebody else. Do I get a paycheck out of it? Well, at the end of the day, it's been a good month. Yeah, I do. But the point is, you still want this. I want to just I want to have the time away so I could just sit on the beach and listen to nothing but waves, But if that doesn't happen this summer, I changed my whole attitude about as unto the Lord. It's a good thing to be. If you start to nurse a little root of bitterness about who you're obligated to, who you're giving service to, you're not doing it as unto the Lord. So check your heart out on that one. I hope that gives some new light to you all on the idea of being obedient to them that are your masters, and how to do it as unto the Lord. And then to go into more detail in chapter 6, verse 6, he says, not with eye service as men pleasers. With eye service means whenever the boss comes around, you get really busy. Oh yeah, really busy, boss. No, and then the rest of the time you're playing, solitaire on the computer. That's eye service. You're just trying to please men, right? You want to please your boss, but if you do it as unto the Lord, see, they both get pleased. You want to do it as servants of Christ, doing the will of God from your soul, from your heart. And that should be the same thing. Don't just do enough to get by. Oh yeah, really busy, boss. No, do it. Just be the guy that shows up first and stays, and leaves last, as unto the Lord. And then with goodwill, don't begrudge this. With goodwill, doing service as to the Lord and not to men, knowing that whatever good thing any man does, the same shall he receive of the Lord. That's do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. And the same shall receive of the Lord, whether he is bond or free, whether he's a master. Somebody's a master and he has servants, an employer does. And then you masters, you do the same things unto them, forbearing, don't threaten them, knowing that your master also is in heaven. Neither is there respect of persons with him. We're all lateral in that regard, whether we were, Elon Musk here or, just a wage earner, blue collar guy somewhere. So the next verse 10, I want to save that. That goes into another glorious thing, and we've bumped right up against 7:30. So with that, I'm gonna put a sock in it and turn things over to Lilia in hopes that anybody has any comments, anything to share, or any questions. I hope you enjoyed that, folks. I did.
Thank you
What
so
say
much.
you?
Yeah, these are very great recommendations as we go into work as Christians and whatever our job is, like you said, so helpful to have that attitude, and it does make a difference when you realize who you're working for, right?
Yay, man, it's true. That's good. Thank you, Lilia. It's good.
Does anybody have any comments or questions? Let us know. And if you're watching this on replay on YouTube, you can also send us a message and we would love to connect with you.
Oh, nice. You want to talk to us about the next next days off?
Yes, so there will be several days in the summer that we will be taking off. We will be resuming a regular schedule back after the summer break. But I will email everybody with this information. I know, Pastor John, you had some dates you wanted to add as well. So once we get all our dates together, we'll send you the
Yeah,
calendar.
I think for sure we're going to be here next week, right? On the
Yes.
12th. So that's all you need to know.
Yes.
We'll be back on.
We'll be back.
We'll be back on the 12th for sure, but not on the 19th or the 26th, and possibly others. And I know we'll deal with August when we get a little closer to it. But we had a little technology kerfuffle with recording the message last week. Lily, you want to give us a status update?
Yes, unfortunately, we do not have a video for last week. So I am going to try and convert the audio so that I can actually upload it to YouTube.
What kind of file is it?
The file is an audio. Well, we can talk about this.
Okay, we'll talk about it. We can talk about it offline.
Yeah.
I just want to be able to help you.
Yes.
Okie dokie. So
I'm going to stop recording.